You ever walk into a room and feel like the oxygen gets sucked out of your lungs? That's what it felt like the first time I met Caleb. I wasn't supposed to fall for him. He wasn't meant for me. He was my best friend's boyfriend. Tyler had been my best friend since college. We met our freshman year, both stuck in the back of a mandatory writing seminar. He was loud and confident, a theater kid with a laugh that could fill a whole building. I was quieter, more sarcastic, and preferred the corners of a room. But somehow we clicked. Maybe it was because we were both gay and trying to figure out what that meant at 19. Maybe it was because we were the only ones in the class who didn't take ourselves too seriously. Either way, Tyler became my person, my ride or die. Over the years, we moved through the usual post-college chaos together. Bad roommates, worse jobs, a few messy relationships. Tyler had more of those than I did. I've always been more reserved, I guess. Pickier. Or maybe just scared. I remember the exact moment he told me about Caleb. We were at our usual bar, a divey little place on the east side with sticky floors and $2 whiskey shots. Tyler slid into the booth across from me, cheeks flushed like he'd run there. "I met someone," he said, already smiling. "Oh no," I teased. "Another yoga instructor?" He laughed. "No, better. He's a nurse. Works ER shifts at Memorial. He gave me his number after I came in with a sliced finger." "You got a guy to flirt with you while bleeding?" Tyler grinned. "You should see him. You'd fall in love too." I didn't know then how right he'd be. I met Caleb a couple weeks later. Tyler invited me to a casual dinner at their place. "It's just pasta," he said, "but Caleb makes a killer carbonara." I said yes, of course. Tyler was my best friend. Meeting his new guy was part of the deal. When I got to their apartment, I wasn't prepared for how Caleb looked. Tall, a little scruffy, with dark hair that curled slightly around his ears and forearms that hinted at strength without looking like he lived at the gym. But it wasn't just that, it was his voice, the way he said my name, the quiet confidence in the way he moved, like he didn't need attention to own the room. And it was the way he looked at Tyler. God, he looked at Tyler like he was the most fascinating person in the world. Like there was nobody else worth listening to. I liked him immediately. Not in a romantic way. Not at first. I was just happy for Tyler, really. After a string of guys who treated him like a temporary thrill, Caleb seemed different, solid, grounded. Over the next few months, I saw them together a lot. Group hangouts, movie nights, birthday dinners. I was in their orbit. And the more I saw of Caleb, the more I noticed things I shouldn't, like how he listened when I talked. Really listened. How he'd remember tiny things I said weeks ago, or the way his eyes would linger when I laughed at something Tyler said. And then there were the quiet conversations, when Tyler was in the kitchen, or in the bathroom, or just not paying attention. Little moments that felt charged, like the air shifted slightly when it was just the two of us. But I told myself it didn't mean anything. Caleb was Tyler's boyfriend. He loved Tyler, and Tyler loved him. That was obvious. Still, the feeling in my chest grew harder to ignore. It all came to a head one weekend in July. Tyler invited a few of us to his family's lake house. His cousin, a couple of mutual friends, me, and of course Caleb. It was hot and humid, the kind of weekend where the only thing to do is float in the water with a drink in your hand. One night, everyone went to bed early. I stayed out on the dock with a beer, staring at the black water and listening to cicadas. I didn't hear Caleb come out until he was standing beside me, another beer in his hand. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. "Too hot." He nodded, sitting down beside me, close but not touching. We sat there in silence for a while. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What did you think of me when we first met?" I glanced at him. "You want the polite answer or the honest one?" "Honest," I exhaled. "I thought you were too good for Tyler." He smiled a little. "And now?" I looked away. "Now I think you're perfect for him." There was a long pause. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, I think I like talking to you too much. I turned to him slowly. His eyes were on the water, not on me. What does that mean? I asked. I don't know, he said, still not looking at me. Sometimes I think I met the right guy through the wrong person. And just like that, my world cracked open. I didn't sleep that night. After Caleb said what he said, he stood up, mumbled something about heading to bed, and disappeared down the path toward the house. I just sat there, beer warm in my hand, the sound of the lake lapping softly at the wooden dock under me. The words kept echoing in my mind. Sometimes I think I met the right guy through the wrong person. He didn't need to say it twice. I knew what he meant, and it scared the shit out of me. I had always believed myself to be someone who knew where the lines were and respected them. Tyler wasn't just some friend. He was my closest person, the guy who stood by me through every awkward coming out phase, every breakup, every Christmas I didn't want to spend with my family. He was like my chosen family. So why, sitting alone in the dark, was my heart hammering like I'd just done something wrong? The next morning, Caleb acted like nothing had happened. He was all smiles and breakfast prep, cracking eggs into a skillet and passing out mugs of coffee like he hadn't just turned my entire internal world inside out. Tyler kissed him on the cheek when he passed behind him to grab milk from the fridge, and Caleb smiled at him like he meant it. And maybe he did. I had no idea what to think anymore. I tried to tell myself it had been a weird late-night moment, a heat-induced slip of the tongue. Maybe he'd had one too many beers and it didn't mean anything. Guys say stupid things all the time, right? I mean, how many times had I told someone, you're too good for them, just to be supportive? But the problem was, Caleb didn't say I was too good. He said he liked talking to me too much. He said he felt like maybe I was the right person. That wasn't just a compliment, that was something else. The rest of the weekend was torture. Everything Caleb did felt louder, more noticeable. The way he laughed at my jokes before anyone else. The way he'd sit a little closer than necessary when we were playing cards or passing around a joint. The way his eyes kept finding mine across the deck or the kitchen table. And the worst part? Tyler noticed none of it. He was just being his usual self. Friendly, upbeat, oblivious. He trusted me, trusted us. He had no reason not to. On Sunday afternoon, as we were packing up the car, Tyler handed me my sunglasses I'd left on the porch and said, "You know, I'm really glad you and Caleb get along. I've dated guys before who just didn't vibe with you, and it always made things feel off." I forced a smile. "Yeah, he's great. He really likes you, you know." "Tyler?" "Not like that," he added quickly, laughing. "I just mean, he always says you're easy to talk to, that you listen. I think you ground him." I felt sick to my stomach. "Cool," I muttered, tossing my bag into the trunk like I hadn't just been stabbed by guilt. That week back in the city, I avoided both of them. I didn't answer texts, skipped our usual midweek trivia night, and made up an excuse about work. I needed space to figure out what the hell was happening in my head. But avoiding Caleb only made things worse. I kept replaying that night on the dock. His voice. The way he'd said it without looking at me. Like it was a confession he hadn't meant to let out. Or maybe he had meant it. That was the part one couldn't shake. It hadn't felt like an accident. A few days later, I came home from work and found him standing outside my apartment. It was almost 9, the street quiet except for the occasional buzz of a passing car. He was leaning against the wall beside my building, arms crossed, like he'd been there a while. "What are you doing here?" I asked, startled. "We need to talk." I looked around, unsure whether I should let him in, unsure whether I wanted to. But then he looked at me, and I saw it. This tension in his eyes, like he'd been turning things over just as much as I had. And despite everything, I still opened the door. Inside, I didn't offer him anything to drink. I just tossed my keys on the counter and stood across from him in the kitchen. "This isn't a good idea," I said. "Probably not," he agreed. "So why are you here?" Caleb ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about that night, and I need to know if it was just me." I stared at him. "What do you want me to say, Caleb? That I felt something too? That I think about it all the damn time? Because I do. And it sucks." He took a step toward me, voice low. Then why are we pretending it didn't happen? Because you're with Tyler. I snapped, sharper than I meant. Because you love him. Or at least you say you do. He looked at me for a long second. I do love him, but I waited. But I don't know what I'm doing anymore, he finished quietly. I've never felt this drawn to someone like this. It's not just attraction. It's easy. You feel easy. That's not fair, I said, my voice cracking. You don't get to come in here and say that and walk away back to your boyfriend. I'm not walking away. Then, what are you doing? He stepped closer again. I'm trying to be honest. I shook my head. It's too late for that. We stood in silence, the distance between us maybe 2 feet. I could feel his breath. I hated how badly I wanted to reach for him, how much I wanted something I shouldn't want. Finally, I turned away. You need to go, Caleb. He didn't argue. Just nodded once, quietly, and walked to the door. As he opened it, he paused. If things were different, but they're not, I said, not turning around. Then he left. And I stood in my kitchen, fists clenched, trying not to fall apart. The next morning, I woke up with that heavy, sick feeling you get after doing something you know wasn't technically wrong, but felt dangerously close. Caleb hadn't kissed me. We hadn't even touched. But something between us had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the half-open blinds, the sunlight cutting sharp lines across my floor. I couldn't shake the image of him standing in my kitchen, the look in his eyes when he said you feel easy, like he'd meant it as a compliment. Like I was the safe choice he couldn't have. I told myself I'd text Tyler that morning, just to check in, to make sure things felt normal. But when I opened my phone, there was already a message waiting from him. Tyler, brunch this weekend? You, me, and Caleb. My treat. I stared at the text for a long time, my stomach twisting. It felt almost cruel, like the universe had heard everything and decided to play with me. I typed out a response, sure, sounds good, and deleted it. Then typed again, actually, I'm busy this weekend, and deleted that too. I must have written 5 different replies before I finally sent. Me, yeah, I'm down. Tell me when. It was the easiest lie I could manage. Saturday came faster than I wanted. I almost canceled twice, standing in front of my mirror, convincing myself I was too tired or hungover from nothing at all. But I went anyway, because I didn't know how to explain not going without sounding suspicious. The brunch spot was one of those hip little places, with exposed brick and hanging plants and servers, who all looked like models pretending to care about toast. I spotted them at a corner table, Tyler in a faded blue shirt already waving me over, and Caleb sitting across from him, looking too good in a white tee that clung to him just right. I forced a smile as I sat down. Finally, Tyler grinned. We were starting to think you ghosted us. Nah, just late, I said, picking up the menu mostly so I wouldn't have to look at Caleb. But I could feel him. It's strange how your body knows when someone's eyes are on you, even when you're not looking back. My skin prickled with it. So, Tyler said between sips of mimosa, Caleb got offered a promotion. I looked up, surprised. Seriously? Caleb nodded, modest like it was nothing. Yeah, night shift supervisor. It's a pay bump, but rough hours. Still, I said. That's huge, man. Congrats. He smiled softly. Thanks. Tyler clinked his glass against Caleb's. I told him we'd celebrate. Maybe get away next month, you should come. Me? I said, startled. Yeah, lake house again. You'll actually relax this time. My throat went dry. I managed a nod, hoping it passed for casual. For most of brunch, I stayed quiet while Tyler filled the air with stories. Every time Caleb spoke, I felt a pulse of something between us. Small glances, quick smiles that no one else would notice, but I did. I hated how natural it felt. How easy it was to slip back into that quiet rhythm we had, when Tyler wasn't paying attention. After we paid, Tyler excused himself to the restroom, and it was just me and Caleb at the table. The air shifted instantly. He leaned forward a little, his voice low. You've been avoiding me, I swallowed hard. Yeah, because I should. He nodded slowly, fingers tracing the rim of his glass. I know. I just... Don't, I said, sharper than I meant. Please don't do that thing where you almost say something you shouldn't. Caleb looked down, smiled sadly. You always know what I'm thinking. That's not a good thing, I muttered. He glanced up then, eyes steady on mine. It's the thing that's making this impossible to ignore. Before I could respond, Tyler came back, smiling like nothing was wrong. You guys ready? Yeah, I said quickly, standing up. I've got to get going anyway. Got some work stuff. Tyler groaned. On a Saturday? Deadlines don't care about weekends. Caleb just watched me quietly, saying nothing as I left. But the silence between us said everything. That night, I went for a walk just to clear my head. The city was buzzing, bars spilling laughter into the streets, the air thick with the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Caleb. Caleb. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Caleb. Just for a minute. I promise. I stood on the corner, staring at the message. Every rational part of me screamed no. Every other part wanted to see him again, just to stop feeling like I was suffocating. 5 minutes later, I texted back. Me. Fine. 10 minutes. Eager boat at my place. That's it. When I opened the door, he was already there, rain starting to fall, hair damp against his forehead. You're going to get pneumonia, I said automatically. He half smiled. You sound like Tyler. That stung more than he probably meant it to. Inside, the room felt smaller than usual. Or maybe it was just the space between us shrinking again, like it always did no matter how much I tried to stop it. I meant what I said, he started. The other night, I don't know what this is, but it's not going away. Then you need to end it, I said quietly. With Tyler. You can't have both. I know, he said. But I'm not ready to lose him. Then you're going to lose me instead. He stepped closer, voice breaking. I don't want that either. Then pick a side, Caleb. He hesitated, just long enough for me to know what his silence meant. And then he reached out, fingers brushing my wrist, and whispered, I wish I'd met you first. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, I kissed him. It wasn't a careful kiss. It was the kind that comes from too many nights of pretending not to feel something you've already lost control of. His hands went to my face, mine to his shirt, and for a moment it felt like gravity itself gave up trying to keep us apart. When we finally pulled away, both breathing hard, he looked wrecked. I'm sorry, he whispered. Yeah, I said, voice shaking. Me too. He left without another word. And when the door closed, I realized I'd just broken something that could never be fixed. The next morning, sunlight cut through my blinds like it was trying to expose me. My apartment smelled faintly like rain and guilt. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's face. The way he looked right after we kissed, like he wanted to say something and couldn't, like he knew what it meant, same as I did. I'd crossed the line. And worse, I didn't even regret it. I lay there, motionless, listening to the hum of traffic outside. My stomach turned at the thought of Tyler. How was I supposed to look him in the eye again? We'd made it almost 10 years as best friends without ever lying to each other. And now I'd kissed the one person I wasn't supposed to touch. By the time my phone buzzed, I already knew who it was. Tyler, you up? Caleb's been acting weird all morning. Did something happen between you two? My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. He didn't sound angry, just confused. But confusion had a short shelf life. It turned to suspicion fast. I typed out 5 different replies, erased them all, and finally wrote, Me? Nah, all good. Maybe just tired from the night shift thing. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. I dropped my phone face down on the nightstand and sat there for a long time. That week, I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, ignored calls. But pretending didn't stop the guilt from gnawing at me every time I passed the bar where we'd all met, or the coffee shop Tyler loved. On Thursday, I saw them together. I was walking home when I spotted them across the street. Tyler with his arm looped through Caleb's, laughing at something. Caleb looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but he was smiling. At least the version of a smile you put on when you're trying to convince everyone you're fine. He didn't see me. I ducked behind a parked car, which felt pathetic but necessary. My heart pounded so hard it made me dizzy. Seeing them like that was a punch straight to the chest, proof that life had moved on for them, even if I was stuck in the wreckage. When they disappeared down the block, I finally exhaled and kept walking. I didn't notice my hands were shaking until I dropped my keys trying to unlock my door. Friday night, Tyler showed up at my apartment unannounced. He never did that. I opened the door to find him standing there, hair messy, holding a six-pack. "We haven't hung out in forever," he said. "I figured I'd fix that." I stepped aside. "Sure, come in." He plopped down on the couch, cracking open a beer. "Caleb's working late. Thought I'd bother you." I sat in the armchair across from him, trying to act normal. "Good choice." For a while, it almost felt like old times. We talked about work, random gossip, stupid memes. Then, out of nowhere, he said it. "Has Caleb seemed off to you?" My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's been distant," Tyler said. "Not cold, just somewhere else." "I don't know. I asked if I did something, and he said no. But I can feel it. Something's off." I forced a shrug. "Probably stress. Night shifts mess with people." "Yeah," he said softly, staring into his beer. "Maybe." We sat there in silence, the air thick with everything I wasn't saying. I wanted to tell him. God. I wanted to unload it all. To confess, to let him yell at me, to burn everything down, so at least it would stop festering inside me. But when I looked at him, I couldn't do it. He looked tired, like he'd already been fighting battles I didn't know about. The last thing he needed was another wound, especially from me. So I lied by omission and changed the subject. We talked until almost midnight. When he left, he hugged me like he always did, and I felt sick all over again. A few days later, Caleb texted me, "Caleb, we need to talk." I told him I need space. My heart stopped. "Me? What do you mean space?" "Caleb, from Tyler. From us." I can't keep pretending. I stared at the screen, torn between panic and relief. He was doing what I hadn't had the courage to, but it didn't feel good. It felt like watching a house collapse that you helped build. "Me? Did you tell him why?" "Caleb, not yet. I just said I'm confused." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything I could say that wouldn't make it worse. That night, I lay awake again, phone buzzing every few minutes as messages from both of them came in. Tyler asking if I'd talked to Caleb, Caleb saying he couldn't sleep. It felt like being pulled apart by two tides moving in opposite directions. At 1 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Caleb stood there, hoodie zipped up, rain dripping off the ends of his hair. His eyes looked red, like he hadn't stopped crying since he left their apartment. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated but stepped aside. He walked in and just stood there in the middle of my living room, hands trembling slightly. "I told him it's over," he said finally. I swallowed hard. "You did?" He nodded. He didn't yell. He just looked at me and said, "I knew." The words hit like a slap. Caleb sank onto my couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He asked me if it was you. I didn't answer, but I think he already knew. I sat across from him, heart in my throat. "Then maybe you should tell him everything." He looked up, eyes tired but steady. "Do you want me to?" I didn't have an answer. He stood and took a small step toward me. "Because if I tell him, that means this, whatever this is, has to be real. It can't just be a mistake." His voice cracked on that last word, and I hated how much it mattered. I closed my eyes. "Then don't make it another secret, Caleb. Either tell him the truth or walk away from both of us." He didn't move. He just stood there, looking at me like he was trying to memorize my face. Then, quietly, he said, "I'm not walking away from you." And before I could stop him, he kissed me again, slower this time, almost desperate. I didn't pull away. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "I'll fix it, I promise." But deep down, I knew some things can't be fixed. They can only be survived. I didn't see Tyler for 3 days after that night. 3 long, slow days that felt like standing on a fault line waiting for the ground to finally give. Caleb texted once, a short message. He moved out for a bit, staying with his sister. I'm giving him space. I read it but didn't answer. I couldn't. There's a kind of guilt that seeps into everything. Into the way coffee tastes, the sound of your own name, the way people look at you on the street, even though they don't know what you've done. I felt that guilt in every part of my day. Every time I passed a reflection of myself in a window, I wanted to look away. It was a Thursday when it happened. I came home from work, tired, numb, already reaching for the light switch when someone knocked on my door. It was one of those knocks that didn't sound like a neighbor or a delivery. 3 steady hits, no hesitation. I froze, hand still on the switch. When I opened the door, Tyler was standing there. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, stubble dark against his jaw, hoodie thrown over a wrinkled shirt. He didn't say anything at first, just stared. "Hey," I said quietly. "You want to come in?" He stepped past me without waiting for an answer. I shut the door behind him, the air in the room tightening. For a second, we just stood there, the silence stretching. Then he laughed, short, humorless. "I kept thinking maybe I was imagining it," he said. "The weird tension, the way you two avoided each other, the late-night texts. But I'm not imagining it, am I?" I didn't answer. "Just tell me the truth," he said. "Please." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Don't tie me. Say it." I took a breath that hurt on the way in. We kissed. He closed his eyes like the word itself was a blow. "Once?" I hesitated. That half-second of silence said everything. He nodded slowly. "How long?" "It wasn't. There wasn't an us," I said. "It just happened. And then it kept happening in our heads, even when it shouldn't have." He let out a shaky breath, pacing a little, hands buried in his hoodie pocket. "You know what the worst part is," he said finally. "It's not even the kiss. It's that I trusted both of you so much I couldn't see it coming. I didn't plan it." "You think that makes it better?" He snapped, his voice breaking. "You're supposed to be my best friend. You've been in my life longer than he has. You knew what he meant to me." "I know," I said quietly. "And I hate myself for it." He laughed again, hollow. "Good. You should." The words hit, but I didn't argue. I deserve them. For a while, the only sound was the low hum of the fridge. Then he said, softer, "Did he ever love me?" I didn't know how to answer that either. He turned to me, eyes glossy. "You could have told me. You could have said something before it got this far. I thought it would go away." "Yeah," he said bitterly. "So did I." He moved toward the door. I followed, instinctively, but he stopped with his hand on the handle. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said without looking back. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But don't talk to him for a while. If you care about me at all, give me that." "I will." He nodded once, opened the door and left. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of his footsteps fading down the hall. When it was finally quiet again, I sank down against the door and just stayed there. Days turned into weeks. Caleb tried to call, text, stop by, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. It wasn't about punishment. It was survival. I needed the noise to stop. One night, though, he caught me leaving work. He was waiting near the crosswalk, hands in his jacket pockets, looking like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. "Please," he said, stepping toward me. "Just 5 minutes." I hesitated, then nodded toward a bench nearby. He sat beside me, leaving just enough space between us for the cold to settle in. I told him everything, he said quietly. All of it. He's gone. Moved out. Said he can't even look at me. I nodded. He came to see me. Caleb winced. I figured. What did he say? That I should stay away from you. He sighed, looking down at his hands. Maybe he's right. For a while, neither of us spoke. The traffic light blinked red, green, red again. People passed, wrapped in their own worlds, not noticing us or the wreckage we'd built. Then Caleb said, almost to himself, I thought love was supposed to make things clearer, but it just made everything harder. I turned to him. Love doesn't fix people, Caleb. It just shows you where you're broken. He nodded, eyes glistening. So what now? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe we stop breaking things for a while. Let the dust settle. He gave a sad little smile. You still think about that night? Every day, I said. But that doesn't mean it was right. He nodded again, stood up, and looked at me like he was memorizing me one last time. For what it's worth, he said softly, I wish it had been another life. And then he walked away. I watched him go, the city lights swallowing him as he disappeared into the crowd. Maybe one day we'd see each other again. Two people who once loved the same person, who made the same mistake and survived it. But right then, all I could do was sit there in the cool night air and finally, quietly, let myself cry. 3 months passed. Long enough for the wound to start scabbing over, not long enough for the scar to fade. I didn't see either of them, Tyler or Caleb. Not on purpose. We had the same city, same old haunts, mutual friends, and yet, somehow, we managed not to collide. Maybe they were avoiding me as much as I was avoiding them. The weird thing is, life kept going. I still got up every morning. I still went to work, texted people back, pretended to laugh at small talk in elevators. But underneath it all, I was numb. Not broken, just dulled, like someone had turned the contrast down on everything. I deleted every text thread from Caleb, archived old photos with Tyler. When my friends asked where I'd been, I made vague excuses. Nobody pushed. They knew something had happened. And in our world, silence was often easier than truth. Still, there were moments, like when I passed the bench where Caleb and I sat during one of our last real conversations. Or when I walked past the bar where Tyler and I used to order cheap whiskey and make fun of the people who took life too seriously. There were reminders everywhere, and some days I wanted to chase them down, and some days I just crossed the street. I wasn't looking to heal. I was just trying not to bleed anymore. It was late November when I saw him again. Caleb. I was at a bookstore downtown, of all places, looking for a gift for my coworker's birthday. I don't even know why I walked into that one. It was on a street I didn't usually take, but I did. And there he was, standing near the poetry section, flipping through a dog-eared copy of Something by Ocean Vuong, wearing the same navy coat I remembered from that night we kissed. He hadn't seen me yet. He looked older. Not in a bad way, just like someone who had been through something and didn't hide it anymore. I could have left. Pretended I hadn't seen him. But before I could make that choice, he turned. His eyes met mine. We both froze. For a moment, no one said anything. Then he gave a small nod. A question, maybe. Can we do this? I nodded back. He walked over slowly. We stood between shelves like two people who used to be something, and maybe still were, in some quiet, invisible way. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied. A beat passed. You look good, he added a little cautiously. I smiled, tight. You too. Are you okay? He asked. It wasn't a loaded question. It wasn't layered with guilt or buried feelings. It was simple, sincere. I'm getting there, I said. You? He exhaled. Yeah. It's been hard. But I'm trying. We sat in the bookstore cafe, which was mostly empty, sipping coffees we didn't really want. The conversation stayed surface level at first. Work. Family. Holidays coming up. Then, slowly, it dipped deeper. Tyler? I asked quietly. He moved to Chicago, Caleb said. New job. Fresh start. I nodded. I'm glad. He said goodbye before he left. Told me he didn't hate me anymore. Just needed to stop loving me. That hit hard. I didn't say anything. I miss him, Caleb added. Not in the way I did before, but in that weird, nostalgic way you miss someone who used to know every part of you. I understood exactly what he meant. Tyler had been the person I texted every day, the one I called without thinking. Losing him wasn't just losing a friend. It was losing history. What about you? He asked. I shrugged. I'm learning how to be alone without feeling lonely. That's a good place to be. We didn't linger. After 30 minutes, we stood, dumped our cups, and hesitated near the door. I didn't think I'd see you again, he said. Me neither. I'm glad I did. I met his eyes. Me too. Then he reached out and hugged me. Slow and firm, like he meant it. Not romantic, not desperate, just real. I'm not here to start anything, he said. I just wanted to see how you were doing. I think about you a lot, but I know we left a lot of damage behind. We did, I said, but I'm not angry anymore. Good, he said. Neither am I. He stepped back, offered a small smile. Take care of yourself, okay? You too. And then he left. I stood there for a while, watching the door after he disappeared into the cold, bustling city. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel guilt. I just felt grateful that we had survived each other, that there had been love, even if it hadn't ended well. Even if it hadn't ended at all, just shifted into something else. Sometimes the people we love aren't meant to stay. Sometimes they're just a bridge we have to cross to find the next version of ourselves. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by books and strangers and the soft hum of a city that never stopped moving, I realized I was finally ready to move forward too. It's funny how the biggest moments in your life don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they don't come with fireworks or breakdowns or kisses in the rain. Sometimes they come in the form of quiet decisions. Tiny, irreversible shifts, like choosing not to reach out again. Or finally deleting a number from your phone, not because you're angry, but because you don't need it anymore. That was what the weeks after I saw Caleb again felt like. Not a dramatic ending, just peace. We didn't see each other again. We didn't text. And maybe that's exactly how it needed to be. I started going out more. Said yes to things I used to dodge. Drinks with coworkers, a weekend hike with an old classmate, a birthday party where I didn't know anyone and didn't try to sneak out early. I laughed again. I even started sleeping through the night. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about either of them, Caleb or Tyler, in days. Not because I stopped caring, but because it stopped hurting. Winter bled into early spring. The city softened. Coats gave way to jackets. Gray sidewalks brightened with sun, and something in me thawed too. It was a Sunday when I met someone new. His name was Drew. He sat beside me at a mutual friend's rooftop thing, eating chips directly out of the bag and making fun of the playlist. He was easy to talk to. Not in that intense, emotional way that Caleb had been. Drew was warm, casual, a little goofy, the kind of person who made you feel like things could be fun again. We talked for 2 hours straight, no sparks flying, no slow-motion movie moments, just simple conversation that felt nice. That night, he asked for my number. I gave it without hesitation. We went out the following weekend, then the next, and the next. With Drew, things were slower, softer. There wasn't that edge of danger. He didn't come with baggage I had to unpack. or lines I wasn't sure I should cross. It wasn't complicated, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was trying to climb out of a hole just to connect with someone. I told him about Tyler eventually, about Caleb too. He listened, asked questions, but never judged, just nodded, like someone who understood that people come with histories, and it's okay to carry them as long as you don't let them hold you back. That's when I knew this was different. Months passed. Tyler and I never talked again. I thought about reaching out once or twice, even drafted a long, apologetic message that I never sent. But maybe that was for the best. Some relationships don't get rebuilt. Some friendships don't survive certain kinds of betrayal. And that's okay. It doesn't mean they didn't matter. They mattered more than I can say. One afternoon, Drew and I were lying on the grass in the park, the city humming softly around us. He had one arm behind his head, sunglasses on, the other hand loosely wrapped around mine. "You ever think about people you used to love?" he asked out of nowhere. I turned my head to look at him. "Yeah," I said honestly. "Not all the time, but yeah." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Me too," he said. "Feels like they're still a part of the architecture, you know, like a foundation. Not the whole house anymore, but something it was built on." I smiled. "That's a good way to put it." He squeezed my hand. "Well, I like this house." And I did too. I never stopped loving Tyler, not in the way that matters. And I'll always carry something quiet and unresolved for Caleb, because feelings don't disappear just because you know they're inconvenient. But the difference now is, I'm not holding on to either of them. I'm letting them live in the past, where they belong. Not as regrets, but as reminders of who I was, of how far I've come, and of everything I learned on the way here.